everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'll be taking a look at Savage Dragon Ultimate Collection Volume 2. I really enjoyed diving back into Savage Dragon with Volume 1. This is a good nostalgia book for me. I got the first one, having really fond memories of Savage Dragon, being kind of interested in seeing how well it held up, and surprisingly, Savage Dragon really held up. This is a book that I think continues to be great to this day, and really happy to find that the early volumes, that basically Erik Larsen was making a great book from the start. So I had to get volume 2, and it was equally excited to read it. So just want to go through and celebrate some of the things that I think is great about this book. One of the things that when this book was coming out was difficult for me is that you did get scenes like this where they were much more explicitly sexual than any of the other Image books, at least coming out at the time. Obviously, I was like 12 or 13, so I was quite titillated, pun intended, by scenes like this, but I was also just absolutely terrified that my parents would find Savage Dragon, and I had Savage Dragon was by far my favorite book going on at the time, especially in terms of story. I think like any Jim Lee product was my favorite thing in terms of art, but love Savage Dragon. I was always like, from this moment forward in the book, having to debate with myself, should I keep using my allowance money to buy it, or is it just going to get me in trouble? I kept going with it for a while though. Also really fondly remember this issue where he switched his styles and was taking on this darker, almost, it looked like he was being a little influenced by Frank Miller and Mike Mignola. But he had put a contest, and I'm pretty sure I'd entered a character into it, was hoping to win, that he would take one fan's character and work him into an issue. So this lobster guy here, that was really fun to look back at. We're introduced to this character, the Fiend, who's basically fueled by hate, an entity that feeds on the emotions of others, wants to take out the Savage Dragon, and is finding people who hate him and feeling their hate. This is very much tied to also the media. So you have the Jerry Rivers show, obviously Jerry Springer, and I forget what that other guy's name was at the time. I look back on that now because me and my friends would stay up late to watch Jerry Springer at like 2 in the morning, and I remember when it became like a mid-afternoon thing, I thought, ooh, that can't be good for this to be, like, that is something similar to Savage Dragon that we hid from our parents, and now it was in the middle of the day. And I look back on that and like, the hate that was put out through that show, like what it did to our society. And so I think it's really kind of insightful that Larsen was already picking up on how much hate is fueled by the media, in this case tying this character to the media, talking about Savage Dragon as this evil person. Also continuing to play out the story of who Savage Dragon is with this punk rock kid, this woman who thinks her kid Rodney. Savage Dragon just always had all those subplots always cycling, which I think is what makes Larsen such a great writer. He's always setting up like something else, the next thing. Here's that Fiend character having some power now. Really, this is one of those images that stuck with me. I still I look at that image, and that's still, I'm like a kid looking at it again. I thought it was such a cool image, also so gnarly with the fingers in there. And like Larsen's really good at creating those images. He also uses them. He'll use them very well, like in repetition. So he'll create repetitions. Like in the first volume, you have the issue 12, I think, which is all just the single panel, like full page spreads of Frank and Dragon going into Overlord's tower. And it had this with the both of them, and so now you get this same image over and over again, and he builds up these symbols. The image of Dragon Lane in the burning field comes up over and over again. There's these images that he repeats that build meaning throughout the story. And in this case, what we've done is we found out that Frank didn't actually get killed. It's a like morphine creature that was given to Savage Dragon by Vanguard, and so this is starting to let Overlord know that Frank's still out there somewhere. This is another one of those pictures that I'll just always remember, with him ripping the tongue out of this guy's face right there. Such a good image. And like I kind of like the coloring on a lot of these too. They play with color a bit. Then there's the issue 13 of Savage Dragon, which was originally drawn by Jim Lee. Obviously, Erik Larsen didn't want to be part of that. I think it was called Image Zero, where all of the founding creators went in and drew each other's books, and the ones that got swapped for Savage Dragon was Jim Lee drew Savage Dragon and Erik Larsen drew Wildcats. Rereading it, I can tell that Larsen did not want to be doing this. Part of the way you know it is he's constantly just making fun of the Wildcats a little bit, but also you know that he basically took his issue of Wildcats, added a little bit to it to contextualize it, like bridge the gap between issue 12 and 14, and he re-released it as Savage Dragon 13 because he didn't want Jim Lee's issue 13 standing as like canon in the run. He wanted to preserve his run so that he can say that he has a, you know, I think Erik Larsen is still aiming for Dave Sims' record on Cerebus. He wants to beat the 300, so he really wanted to make sure he got that issue 13 in there. And then also there's just these things where he's kind of poking fun at the bad writing in Wildcats. Like he has the characters going here, and pretty much every one of the characters uses like an acronym at some plate. CTR, Combat Training Room. ASAP, as soon as possible. BYOB, bring your own booze. R&R. And like playing those games, and then here it's like BFD, big fucking deal. So playing those games that, like, you know, the Wildcats would take seriously, where they always have some new weapon or plane or something, and he's like, this is fucking bad writing, this is dumb. So I thought that was fun. We come back to this image of Frank again. Actually, pulling this sticky note off will show something bad about the production of these books. Something about the ink that goes on this paper. Normally, when I get books from Image that have these nice, thick, shiny papers and really rich colors, like the ink on it's really, really nice, but there were a number of times while reading this where just my finger was resting on a part of the page for a while, and it wound up smearing stuff. And then normally on these shiny things, the sticky tabs come off really well, but I've actually now ruined the book a little bit because they're pulling up ink and leaving residue, which is very unusual. These sticky tabs I use don't normally do that. Here's another really funny scene. Another one that when I was a kid, I was worried that, you know, they're obviously superheroes having sex, oh my god, and showing it. But I think this is really funny here, where Savage Dragon is asking Rapture how her tits stay in, basically. And she says, static electricity, it clings. So the fact that he's even taken the time to come up with explanations like that, I think it's just good, fun writing. You know, it's all silly. Real strong memories of this character, Mace, and this introduction shot of him here. Just such a cool character. I mean, I wanted to go draw veins and stuff like that, ball and chains. And then also, I think really cool design stuff, just playing with like the article being part of the page design there and the paperclip. Just showing someone who really is experimenting to keep themselves happy. And I think, you know, Larsen still does that to this day with Savage Dragon. He's still, you know, if you take a look at those books, it looks like he's still playing. He's still trying stuff to keep himself happy and busy. Really fun here. I know that Larsen and I think John Byrne were really taking pot shots at each other. This character here was part of a parody of John Byrne's, I think it was Next Men that he was publishing. And then this is She-Dragon, so it's obviously making fun of She-Hulk. And we have a moment here where it seems like the character is doing a fourth wall break like She-Hulk would do, and she's talking to the camera. But then on the next page, you get the sense that, nope, it's not actually a fourth wall break. She's not talking to us, the reader. What happened is she has multiple personalities, and she's talking to one of her other personalities. So playing with that fourth wall break, kind of making fun of it as a really kind of shitty, cheesy thing to do, especially in an action comic. There's types of comics where that's really an important part of the story, but that it's unnecessary for someone like She-Hulk. And then seeing like, here's a reason that you could actually do that right. Also looking at the Fiend now has taken over the mother of the girl who Savage Dragon's first girl that he dated, who got shot right outside of. Well, she opened the door to his apartment and got shot in the face and killed. So the mother hates him for that, and she becomes the main character here. This is probably the final issue that I bought. I remember reading this issue. I think this scene here and just some of the other imagery in this issue had me pretty convinced that if my parents found it, that I was just taking too many risks buying Savage Dragon. It was getting like darker in its content. I mean, it'd always been one of the darker books, but it was also with the sexuality at 12 or 13 or whatever. I was just absolutely too scared to to buy those books. Maybe I don't remember this image. Maybe that was in there at the end of the book. I don't know. I think these are just covers. So this was the first issue then that I did not read the Savage Dragon for a long time. I do remember Wizard doing an article on this page though, and pointing out that this electrical cord here is not plugged into the wall. It's plugged into another source of electricity. And like, given this image, maybe this was like one of the covers or something. Maybe this was a pinup. I forget. I don't remember seeing those images. But given this kind of stuff, it's probably better that I did quit buying it, because if my parents had found that, I would have been in a hell of a lot of trouble. But in retrospect, as an adult, it's pretty tame and like a little cringeworthy, but also I think pretty funny. So again, really brutal imagery here with this like zombie character, and just brutal story as well, emotionally brutal story, where the mother, possessed by a fiend, takes Dragon out to the gravesite of the gal he had been dating who got killed right in front of him. And they have this like big fight going on there about whose responsibility it really was. That ends with Dragon dead, that image of him kind of in the center of the field that we come back to over and over and over again in the series. Really, again, like that strategy that Larsen does. Then you come back to this must be issue 24. You come back to this, not all spreads throughout the issue, but coming back to this battle with the Overlord, and Savage Dragon finally comes back and wins. Really like the texture work, the cross contour texture work, kind of Frank Miller-y stuff that Larsen uses on this burnt up dragon figure. Really like, again, the repetition of symbolism. That Overlord comes down and falls on the same spike that impales Dragon at the end of issue 12. But since he's wearing that suit, he doesn't get impaled. He breaks the spike. So it's like this really good visual of overcoming the thing that's hurt you the most. And yeah, again, we get a better look at the texture work. This is something I think that was really part of what appealed to me about early Savage Dragon. And when I've looked at more recent issues, it's not so dark and gritty anymore. I really miss that darker, more textural approach that Larsen took. I think that's a really nice look. Finding out the backstory of Overlord's interesting and whatnot. And then it just sets up for moving on, that's not going to be the main villain the whole time throughout. Then we get a cover and pinup gallery right away, a very cringe, groan-worthy one here, where he's holding up his good friend on the police department, Alex, and squinting through her legs, but also just kind of looks like he's sniffing her crotch. Larsen is a funny one in that it's pretty obvious what his politics are, but then there's also a lot of things where you could see him, people trying to cancel him as well. Really funny image here. I can't imagine that being a cover. That had to have been a pinup, where Dragon's pissing on Overlord's neck as he took his head off. It's just funny. He definitely has those moments where he doesn't filter himself, and I appreciate that about Larsen. Then a really cool look into his sketchbook, looking at his layouts for all of these things, showing how he'll work an image out over time. Like, is it going to be this format or is it going to be this format? Always enjoy seeing an artist's process. And then the issue with, I think his name's Jimbo, the lobster guy, having the whole issue laid out here with all the black spotted as well, I think is really cool and informative. So lots of good extras. If you're going to do the Ultimate Collection, you might as well put all of this in. I think for Larsen, it's also pretty cool that he has all of this material still. I know that at some point he suffered a house fire where all of his childhood art got lost, and I know all of these characters were people he developed in his childhood. So it must be extra precious to him. He seems like a person who was obviously already keeping everything he did, and having lost so much of it, it must be extra precious to have all of that. And it must be really nice to have it all in print, so in case anything else does happen again, this has all been scanned and filed and saved in other places. And then there's just some edited scenes and missing pages, like little pieces from the Wildcat story that are in here as well. So really, really nice collection again. Really reinforcing my love for especially the early Savage Dragon issues, where it is the darker, grittier stuff. Really like having this. The only thing is that weird bit where something's off with how the ink is setting on the paper, but as long as you don't be a dumbass and put sticky tabs on it like I was, and as long as you don't sit there with your oily finger on it too long, it's a really well produced, beautiful book. But I just haven't seen other books like smudge the lettering in the same way. Like if I go there, you can see it's already starting to smudge and gray out and come off. So I don't know what's going on with the print there, if they just didn't put the final sealant coat on it or whatnot, but looks great. Reproduced really well. Nice to see it on the shiny paper, and big fan. I will be buying volume 3, and I hope they get all of them. Centralia is an awesome, gorgeous comic by rising Dutch star Neil Van Peet. This is his first work. It's a really great sci-fi story. There's a world in the future where the sun has gotten so hot that people can't be on the ground. So they have to run around. There's a lot of conceits that go with that. What is the world that looks like? And I think you can see by the art that Sean's description of this book as like a Moebius for young adults, a YA Moebius, is a really great description of this really gorgeous and like wild, wacky, fun book.